So if you own a business or you're planning on starting a business, do you actually have to register the business? And what I mean by register the business is to register it or incorporate it with your provincial business registry. And now I'm speaking from a Canadian lens here. It might vary a little bit from country to country, jurisdiction to jurisdiction. But in Canada, if we're registering a business, we're typically doing that with our province and the business registry or corporate registry of the province. And one thing to be aware of is when I'm talking about registering a business, that is completely separate from getting a municipal business license. Sometimes people will confuse the two and they think that once they get a municipal business license from their town or their city that their business is registered, and that's not the case. Again, that's completely separate. Before you get that municipal business license, you should register the business in most cases, and that's what I'm going to talk about in this video, is do you actually need to register it? So the answer is yes, typically you do need to register a business with your provincial business registry. There are some exceptions, but if you are operating under a business name or also known as a trade name or a DBA, if you've identified that business name and you're marketing yourself under that, then in most cases you do need to register that with your provincial business registry. Otherwise, you're conducting business under a business name that you don't actually have registered, and there can be penalties for doing that. Now, the other case in which you need to register your business is when you decide to set up your business as a corporation. Even if you're not going with a business name, even if you're just going with a numbered name for your corporation, because you're creating a corporation, that's a separate legal entity from the human owners, then you do need to register it. And by register it, I mean actually go through the incorporation process with your provincial business registry. And then in some cases, you don't necessarily have to register your business, at least not with the business registry. You'll probably still have to get a municipal business license, maybe get a GST account, a PST account, things like that. But one instance in which you would not necessarily need to register the business is if you're just operating as a sole proprietorship under your personal legal name. So if you're just Sarah Smith or John Smith and you're a photographer and you've started your own business and you don't have a business name, you're just Sarah Smith photographer or John Smith wedding photographer, no business name there, then typically you don't actually need to register that business with your provincial business registry. Again, you'll still probably need a PST account, GST account, things like that. But registering with the provincial business registry, again, usually isn't necessary in cases like that where you don't actually have a business name as a sole proprietor or even as a partnership as well. Now, another example would be if you're just kind of acting as an independent contractor, you're not really setting up a business. There's just some company that's hiring you to do some work for them, not operating under a business name. The same thing applies. Maybe you don't really have a business in the same sense you would if you're a sole proprietor creating a photography company. So in a case like this, you also wouldn't have to register the business, again, at least not with the provincial corporate registry or business registry. But typically you would still have to be aware of things like sales taxes because you're an independent contractor. So even though you don't formally have a business and it's not registered, at some point you might need to start charging GST, and maybe even early on you might have to charge PST, depending on which province you're in and which good or service you're providing. So hopefully this video was useful. Again, important to register your business, especially if you're conducting business under a business name or a trade name, because there can be penalties for doing that without having it registered. Also, you want to be careful because sometimes you might think a business name is available and that you can start marketing yourself under it. But if another business has already registered that name or something similar, then you'll likely get blocked from registering that depending on the jurisdiction. And the other business could report you for using their name or a similar name. So if you got some value from the video, please click like and feel free to come check out my YouTube channel here and subscribe. I have 300 videos that cover business management and business startup topics.